Thank you. Good afternoon. Please be seated. Thank you, Lord. It is nice to have this opportunity to join you. This is my first official visit of my new year as commander, so it's a pleasure to be in Massachusetts. But I just have a few brief words prepared, but before I begin my words, I'd like to share a story with you that really has profoundly affected me, and I'm hoping that you'll be affected by it and maybe also just reflect on it. You heard Dave introduce me. You know, I'm a university professor. Part of a university professor's job is publishing papers, works, books. And I was in the process of writing a paper, and I needed a book that was no longer in print. We had just moved to a new community, and I was complaining that I couldn't find this book, and somebody said, I know a guy in town who's got that book. You need to stop by and see him. You can read the book there, or maybe he'll let you borrow it. So I cold called this gentleman that I'd never met. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. I introduced myself, said I'm writing a paper, and I need a book that I heard you have that's out of print. He said, yeah, I have that. So why don't you come out to the house and I'll show it to you. So we set up an appointment. I went out to his house. Again, never met him before. He brought me into his house, up into his den. Really nice home, nice den. And while he was getting the book, I saw this spoon hanging on the wall. So he's digging out the book for me, and I'm looking at this spoon. It was hanging on the wall on a nail from a tiny little piece of string. So we talked about the book, and he said, you can borrow it, and when you're done, you can just return it. Meanwhile, I said, Harold, what's with the spoon? Well, he took this off the wall, and he handed it to me in two hands, just like this was some majorly important, valuable item. And I looked at it, and you can even see in the back, it's a big spoon, not particularly shiny, no markings on it. It's kind of ugly. So I said, what's the story? He said, well, I was a B-17 pilot in Europe in World War II. And we were shot down. And we crashed. And only 3 of us survived the crash. And we were immediately caught by the Nazis. I said, I was in a Nazi prison camp. And I'm still work. Yeah, what's a spoon? And he said, well, the Nazis used to feed us once a day. We got this liquid stuff that was kind of somewhere between soup and stew. You know, we had to eat it with our hands. And he said, I saw this Russian prisoner who had this spoon. And I traded everything I owned for this spoon. I traded my leather bomber jacket with the sheepskin lining. I traded my last clean pair of socks. And I traded 2 packs of cigarettes. That was everything I had. I traded for this spoon. And he said, I stayed in that prisoner of war camp for almost 3 years until I was liberated at the end of the war. And he said, this spoon kept me alive. He has since passed away. And I'm lucky enough to be holding this spoon. It just goes to show that I don't think we really understand the full depth of sacrifice that our POWs have endured. He traded everything he owned for this spoon. I brought this with me a few different times in my travels, and I've offered people, hey, can I have everything you own for this spoon? They go, oh, I don't think so. But that's the kind of sacrifice that our POWs that did survive and did come back really endured, and that's hard to fathom today. So I wanted you to share Harold's story and this spoon that kept him alive in the Nazi prison camp for 3 years. That affected me deeply. Before I was involved in the American Legion, and I suddenly had a new understanding of what it meant to serve our country, what it meant to be a prisoner, and how that all played out. Let me share with you just some prepared words that I have. Again, Legion family members, guests, and a special shout out to my brother and sister riders. I'm pleased to be with you today as your National Commander of Sons of the American Legion. And as you may have heard, the eligibility I have for membership is through the service of my father in the work in the Marine Corps in World War II. While I was doing a little research on coming here and being on the USS Massachusetts, I found out that there's some interesting elements that connect my father to this ship. My father was a Marine airman and infantryman who flew off the USS Kitcombe Bay aircraft carrier, which was part of an attack group at times included the USS Massachusetts in the raids on Kwajalein, Tinian, Saipan, Truk, Tarawa, and the Marshall Islands changed. My father's logbook is full of combat flights over all of these same islands. Although I doubt he spent any time aboard this ship, I'm sure that he benefited by the air cover it provided his missions, and I'm sure he viewed Big Mamie from up above many times. It's a pleasure to see this ship in person, one that saw the same actions as my father in the Pacific Theater. I can only imagine the mighty power this yielded against our enemy back in those days. It certainly seems in peaceful repose now, docked here in the great state for which it's named. Let it ever remain a monument to our military strength and to those sailors, soldiers, airmen, and Marines who bore the battle during World War II. A constant reminder of the need to be prepared and the need to be ready for whatever threat to our freedom we may face across the globe. May God continue to bless our country, our servicemen and women throughout the world, and again, like you've heard earlier today, bring our POWs and some of our MIAs home that are still missing. God bless the American Legion, and God bless America. Thank you.